It is sometimes said that political geography exists because people are territorial. Most political geographers consider human territoriality to be more than an instinctive biological response. Instead, they see it as a complex form of behavior that is shaped by diverse social and cultural factors related to human identity. In this lecture, we will examine key concepts in political geography. This topic is important to geographers because of the ways nations and states have defined and modified boundaries and have used them to their benefit. Political geography is the study of the spatial aspects of political affairs, which is directly tied to territoriality, which is defined as a strong attachment to or a defensive control of a place or an area. The 195 countries shown on this map provide one powerful expression of human territoriality. The use of such territoriality defined political units has become the dominant mode of political organizations around the world only within the past 4 centuries. Throughout most of human history, people organized themselves in different ways, for example, according to class, kinship, or as subjects owning allegiance to a king, an emperor, or other ruler. The practice of using territory as a basis for political organization stems from an idea about sovereignty that gained prominence following the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. From this peace agreement, it was determined that sovereignty would be the supreme authority of a state over its own affairs and freedom from control by outside forces. Furthermore, it was understood that states could not meddle in the affairs of others and were expected to recognize the existence of other states. In geography, a state, which is a formal term for this and the same as a country, and is defined as an internationally recognized political unit with a permanently populated territory, defined boundaries, and a government with sovereignty over its domestic and international affairs. However, to be a state, 4 conditions have to be met. 1. It consists of a specific territory and defined boundaries. 2. Its territory includes a permanent population. 3. It is recognized as a state by other states. And 4. It has a government with supreme authority over its domestic and international affairs. These maps are an example of a divided state, specifically Cyprus, located in the Mediterranean Sea just below Turkey, which gained its independence from Britain in 1960. The map at the top shows the ethnic distribution in 1970 between Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. Unfortunately, the independence did not fix the problems between the two groups, and a coup occurred in 1974, where Greek Cypriots were seeking unification with Greece. Turkey was not happy with this and invaded the northern third of the island. Partitions followed, as shown in the bottom map, with the United Nations maintaining a buffer zone where thousands of people were internally displaced. The Turkish Republic of North Cyprus was established in 1983, but only Turkey has recognized it. We use the term national almost interchangeably with the word state or country, but they are really not the same. A nation is defined as a sizable group of people with shared political aspirations whose collective identity is rooted in a common history, heritage, and attachment to a specific territory. In other words, a nation refers to a people, and a state refers to a political unit. Some countries are multinational states, where the population consists of 2 or more nations. Most states in the world are multinational states. Even though United States Pledge of Allegiance states one nation, we are really a multinational state since we have a diverse group of people. On the other hand, there are very few countries that are a nation state. A nation state exists when the boundaries of a nation coincide with the boundaries of the state. For instance, Iceland and Japan. Icelanders make up 94% of the population, and in Japan, Japanese make up 99%. The map shows the breakup of the Soviet Union, a multinational state at one point. Some factors contributing to the fall of the Soviet Union were economic crises such as food shortages, poor industrial performance, German reunification, and the related fall of communism in Eastern Europe. When Russia declared its sovereignty in 1990, that act significantly undermined the political legitimacy of the Soviet Union. Home to a diverse population, the Soviet Union fractured largely along internal political and national lines as 15 new states came into existence in 1991. A nation can also be stateless, as in the Kurds, who are a large group of people without a state that occupied lands in northern Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. The Kurds are a prime example of a nation without a state. Imperialism and colonialism are acts of aggression to take control or possession of another state. Imperialism is defined as one state's exercise of direct or indirect control over the affairs of another political society. For example, the United States exemplifies imperialism throughout the world today. We are involved and control many areas of the world, but we don't take up residency. A good example is our involvement in the Middle East. Colonialism, on the other hand, is defined as a form of imperialism in which a state takes possession of a foreign territory, occupies it, and governs it. Africa was a good example of colonialism by European powers. Colonialism transformed Africa. Among other impacts, it gave rise to a number of multinational and landlocked states, shaped new political identities, and built new road, railroad, and trade networks. By the 1980s, European colonization quickly accelerated, leading to the so-called scramble for Africa. As the colonization intensified, tensions grew among the colonizing forces of Europe and therefore convened in Berlin to carve up the region to avoid war. This was called the Berlin Conference. By 1914, Africa was divided into the states as you see in the map. The only countries not under European control were Ethiopia, Libya, and South Africa. They led effective resistance campaigns and were able to ward off any European advancement, even though South Africa had already been invaded by the Dutch. They were proclaimed as self-governing by 1910. This was the first major boundary-making exercise by colonial powers. Colonialism didn't last long in history standards, but long enough to greatly affect the indigenous populations who lived there. They established boundaries that either included opposing tribes or broke up land areas where one tribe occupied. Through racism and their belief that the Africans were inferior, the Europeans often pitted one tribe against another, creating tensions that are still prevalent today. Most of the countries gained their independence and self-determination, which is the ability to choose their own political status, by the 1970s. The map shows Africa's states that Europe carved out and the cultural groups of indigenous populations. Becoming a homogeneous nation-state under these lines are virtually impractical. I often wonder what Africa would have looked like had Europe not invaded the continent. The country shapes, if any, would have looked a lot different. Please pause the video and answer the following. Explain the difference between 1. A nation, 2. State, 3. Nation-state, 4. Multinational state, and 5. A nation without a state. In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific with your answer.